This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
The MeatEater podcast is brought to you by First Light. Whether you're checking trail cams, hanging deer stands, or scouting for elk, First Light has performance apparel to support every hunter in every environment. Check it out at firstlight.com. FIRSTLITE.com. So you guys just competed in a shooting tournament.
We did the SIG
archery rifle competition.
And you got, like, how are you selling it to people? Look, like, I could see saying you got whooped or saying you did good.
And both would be true.
Because if you had 7 things and drew a line in the middle, it'd be 4.
Yes, and that's what we ended up
I don't care
at.
what end you count from.
Perfectly average.
Yep, you count from the left, you come from the left, you come from the right, and 4.
Yeah.
But you know, my daughter...
So you came in 4th place out of 7 people.
Yes, which...
You're proud or sad?
Is my microphone not working?
Perfectly pleasant.
That's what it kind of felt like right there.
No, I just wanted to really make... Yeah. I wanted to be very clear. I wanted all people, all listeners to understand 4 out of 7.
Right. Which it took Clay and I a while to understand that it was right down the middle. Because when I say 4 out of 7, somehow that just seems...
Sounds like you're on the back end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you had to just say,
sounds
are you high or low at 4 in 1 out of 7? I'd go low. But no.
Yeah, because you always
not.
round up.
No, when you put that way, well,
I don't know.
It feels a little higher.
But my daughter took Cal sent all the actual point breakout numbers, 1 through 7. And so then my daughter took the numbers and did some math. I wasn't following the math. And she said that, like, just straight score-wise, we actually were, like, way higher. Like, we were more up into the top 3 as far as score goes than in the bottom 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was real.
If you're at 4 and you went way higher to 3,
there's just a bigger...
Is that way higher?
The numbers were a lot closer in the top 4 than they were in the bottom 4.
Perhaps you should explain. Perhaps you should try to put your arms around the contest. Like,
7.
What were you doing?
7 teams. Each team consists of 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you have I don't know, like
they called them team managers.
Team managers, which would be kind of like a range officer.
Okay.
Which is RO is a common term you hear in these shooting competitions, of which this is my 2nd ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they were representatives of SIG, employees of SIG.
Yep. So were 7 stages every day?
Correct.
So plus a night shoot.
Plus 2 stages at night.
Yep. So and it's all, it's live ammunition, obviously. So it's all these teams are spread out. You have to stick to a strict time calendar, time schedule, which allows for teams to, like, travel through, like, lines of fire, essentially. So it's really seriously orchestrated. That logistically very impressive deal. But
you had roughly 20 minutes to walk somewhere between a half mile and a mile between stages. Everybody had to walk carrying their own gear, lunch, water. And then once you got to the stage, you had about 20 minutes to get the briefing and then the allotted time for the actual stage. So you'd have 5 or 10 minutes of, like, hey, this is what's going on. Walk the course, look at it. Here's the guns, get familiar with them. And then, okay, we have 10 minutes to finish this. The bell is going to start. And then at 10 minutes, we're done. And we start walking to the next stage.
And then there's the scoring I still don't truly understand, but there's a time component of how quickly you can complete the stage. And then there's an accuracy component that, was mostly summed up as hits or misses versus, like
how good you hit.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were saying the way they had it rigged with the timing component on some of these, timing was weighted so heavily.
Yeah.
That you could have just shot all your shots in the air and ran and won.
Yes, you could have hedged your bets, because if you added up the penalties for misses, they still wouldn't hurt you you would be way better off just being like, cool, I'll take all the penalties and I'll see you at the next stage, versus the added time on top of the penalties to try to shoot those targets.
But I
Was
think
there any
that-
long distance shooting?
There was a mile shot.
Yanni hit it on the first shot.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
At a mile? And you still
Mile.
took 4th place.
Yeah, only 2 people out of all the teams hit
out of
that
21.
target.
But listen,
How
I
big
mean,
was the target?
Yanni.
listen,
It's a full size elk.
they originally, Daniel Horner, who is contracted by SIG, does a lot of stuff with SIG, one of the better shooters in the world right now.
He's been on
He
this
set
podcast.
this, yeah, he's been on the podcast. He set the course up. Originally, he was going to put a lot of weight into those 3 shots at a mile you got to take.
And all you got to do is get a piece of it.
You just got to
Right.
make it go ding. And it was a giant. I mean, I'm talking a piece of steel the size of this table. Dang
Yeah.
near.
Yeah.
Like not one that one human can move. It took 2 people to move.
I
this
was saying
piece of
half
steel.
a car.
And I held left edge. I went up there and was like, oh yeah, I got a little bit of wind coming from the left. I'm going to hold left edge of the target, and it dings. So I didn't even get to shoot 2 more shots. I got off the gun and someone else stepped in. Well, then whatever it was, you or Clay, holds left
Clay
edge.
was next.
And it hits like 2 body lengths, 2 target lengths to the right.
2 vehicles to the right.
Like that's how much it changed because of what the wind was
direction.
doing.
Got
right?
it. Yep.
And then, he corrects, 2 car lengths to the left
And hits to the left.
and hits way left, and it was, in the end, they just said that it was windy enough and it was kind of this, you're shooting across this long valley that had draws coming into it. And those people that were in there actually trying to game it and looking at Mirage and stuff said that you could see Mirage go in 2 different directions. And it was just, so I'm not going to take a lot of credit for making a great shot.
And there was
the elevation was pretty much set. When you got there, they're like, do not touch the elevation turret. It's set to hit that target.
Yeah,
Okay,
so this was
you're basically just trying to dope the wind.
even
and
though
you're
we
gonna
were
have to get a little
carrying
lucky.
our personal firearms for that particular stage, and this is how it's different than any of the other competitions I've heard of or been to, is at this particular, you're carrying all of your stuff, including your personal firearm, which you're using on a bunch of different stages. But you could walk up to a stage and it's like, put all that stuff down. Here's a carbine. Like we got to shoot like the new Army issue carbine.
Okay.
And here's a 10 millimeter pistol. And what you're going to do is, you're not going to be able to see the targets, but each flag, there's a target. Run up to that flag, find the target, hit it twice. Make sure your gun's in a safe position. Move to the next flag. Do the same thing. There's 10 targets total. Put the empty or safe weapon on a mat that we have out there, and then sprint back. And when you touch the table, the next person on your team goes and does the same thing. There's like that type of stage, which I thought was super fun, the relays. And then there's also like obviously, here's 3 targets. And here's like the rough range for each of those targets, or take a couple minutes to get your dope, shoot those targets with your rangefinder, get your dope, and it's just impacts as many times as you can hit that target, and you have 10 minutes to do it.
Yep.
Type of thing. So
what was the bow shooting part of it?
There were 3 stages. One was like a really rushed 7, but cool position wise, 7 full body foam targets. So 3 people have to shoot 7 targets apiece in 15 minutes.
1 arrow each, so 21 arrows need to be shot. Was it 15 or 10 minutes?
I thought it was 15.
15.
But
you're
like,
using bow of your choice.
yeah, but you have to sprint from each target to each target.
You wouldn't have to, but if you didn't, you weren't going to get it done.
Yeah.
You weren't going to finish.
Did you have your
course.
recurve?
Yeah. Yeah.
How far were the shots?
That's why I asked.
Plenty good. I mean, I think the max on that was 60 something, right?
Yeah, there might have been a 70, but
because of that, like
You're the only
rush-
guy with the recurve there.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up, Steve. I was not.
Oh,
But magically, all those other recurves just appeared after the competition was over.
Yeah. When it was time to drink beer and just shoot bows,
They got
all of
the
a sudden
recurves
everybody's
out.
got a recurve. And it's like,
but
this is fun.
but they weren't shooting it for the tournament.
No.
So you were the only purist.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, man, like an uncomfortable amount of attention was paid. They're like, oh, look at that. Whoa. Terrible. Yeah, I felt bad about that one because it was so rushed that I was just like, my mindset was like, just throw an arrow. And so that's what I was doing. And I was consequently not hitting anything. It was terrible.
So had you been replaced by a compound shooter, would you guys be on the winner's stand?
I don't
That's what I
think
keep
so
thinking
for
about
that.
fourth place is when you get fourth place,
Yep.
you're not up on those little tiered pedestals.
Yeah.
Well, this was a if you ain't first, you're last kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Because there was only
There's only
one.
room for one winner, huh?
Yeah, there was one check for $50,000, right? That the winning team got to choose which
Nonprofit.
which nonprofit it would go to, and we had chosen the.
They've been listening to too much MeatEater trivia.
Yeah.
Who'd they choose that it goes to?
They chose the Defenders of Freedom Fund.
What's that?
Foundation.
Foundation? Yeah. Yeah. A veterans nonprofit.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And these guys were all veterans or maybe one's still active. I can't remember. But and we were gonna donate to Montana Block Management.
Oh.
Which would have been a good one. Sorry, gang.
Did you go to the winner? Hey, you know what I'd do?
Yeah.
You know what I was planning on doing?
I'm like, 50,000 is a lot. Can we split that up?
Listen, we had one stage where you're basically standing on a cliff. Like you couldn't walk straight up to where you had to go and start. You had to go at an angle up this hill to get to there. And then literally right below you, it was line of sight was probably 50 yards, but your rangefinder would read 27.
Mm-hmm.
There's a giant mule deer that's made out of steel. And his vitals, there's a hole about yay big.
Oh, like
and
the little arrow saver hole.
Yeah, the Iron Maiden is
behind
what
it
they call
is some foam. And then behind him, another 15 yards was a goat. And then another 15 yards farther was a moose with another hole about yay big.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody can make that shot. Because, I mean, it's target this big. And the longest shot.
It's like your typical
was
backyard foam target. It just happens to have a ring of steel around it that will destroy your arrow.
And like,
I thought this was a pistol stage.
Oh, no.
That would have been a lot more fun.
No. And, man, you're in a competition and then you got this thing of this iron that's going to eat your arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't help but make your pin float onto the iron. Like and by the amount, I mean, there was only 21 shooters and there was at least
There's a lot
40
of arrows. Yeah.
busted arrows.
Yeah.
Well, what a great thing if you could. I've thought about actually building an at-home setup like that.
Yeah.
Because what a great way to increase like the stakes of your behind-the-house practice.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You can
And
buy one of those for like $500. I've looked it up, but I'd rather not.
Arrow,
And then you guys-
arrow companies love what
Yeah, I
you're
was
saying
gonna
right
say,
now.
The upfront cost is minimal compared to the long-term
there's some
consequences of busting all your
real
arrows.
legit archery folks up there, like folks that I know that shoot a lot of arrows, and it was pretty funny. They're like, that thing just destroyed us. He's like, they're not hard shots. I don't know what happened, type of thing.
Cal, so you got to shoot 2 at each one. So 6 shots for each person total. And Cal went 3 out of 6 at super steep angle, 27, 45, and 60. And it was pretty impressive.
Well, that's good.
All good arrows. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I don't know, stupid excuses. I should have been shooting a lot more.
What was your favorite stage, you think, out of the...
So there were 2 running stages that were really fun. Okay, and
I thought you were going to say the tacos that we served.
well, I missed that.
We did eat some good tacos.
So
Shout out to some bear meat, man. The bear meat crushed the pronghorn meat. Everybody said that.
That was elk.
There was no bear?
That was bear and elk.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, the bear meat crushed the elk.
yeah, can't beat that grease.
Mm-mm.
You know. So they happen to be in the same stage. There's a bunch of fun stuff, but I liked there's one where you set your rifles down on these mats.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a 200-yard gong, a 400-yard gong, and a 600-yard gong, and they were all like the real tiny targets.
I'd say they were 6x8s, maybe 8x10s, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 6 inches by 8
Not as big as
inches,
a sheet of paper.
And they're like, you got to get your ranges. The close one's worth fewer points, the mid one's worth mid points, and the far one's worth the max points.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they started it is you have one round in the chamber, you get your range, you shoot, and then to get your next bullet, you have to sprint 100 yards, get one bullet.
I think it was 50.
No, it was 100.
Was it really?
Yeah. Yeah,
How the
you're
hell
running.
do you know?
You just had those long legs.
I was there.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Seth was there.
So get one bullet out
of
of
a
the bucket and then sprint back to your gun, drop that round in, shoot the target again. And as much running as you're willing to do
In 15 minutes.
in 15 minutes. And that was super fun.
We liked that stage because we won. we had the highest score.
You guys are quick little buggers.
Well, it was surprising. We all just sat there and shot the 600-yarder just because it was high points. And you do the math and you're like, well, even if I miss one, even if I went 1 for 2, I'm going to make more points there than if I hit every time at 200.
Yep.
And I think we probably shot at 80 or 90% on the 600.
Yeah, we
And
shot
so
real well,
It was
too.
an easy decision.
Yeah.
The next day at the same stage, it was changed up. There was pistols, and there was 15?
Yeah, there are a lot of targets. I don't know how many, but
15, maybe even 20. I don't know. A bunch of steel set up on the other side of a fence from 10 yards to 50 yards, kind of in this array where you had to move along the fence to be looking straight at them, right?
and this is with a 9mm pistol.
Yeah. And you had 2 clips, each holding
21.
Each holding 21.
Yep.
And this was timed. And again, a relay. So one guy would pick up the gun, would have it loaded, kind of run along that fence until where you can engage these targets and move through shooting at all these targets with a pistol as fast as you can. At the last one, the next target at the end was 200 yards away. It was worth like 300 seconds. Again, this is where I wish I could tell you exactly how the scoring was worth. But basically, like, that one target was worth more than all the other ones you had just hit. So you had to sprint down there, shoot it, and then sprint your butt all the way back. And
But you could shoot from 200 yards too with your 9mm pistol.
With a red dot?
yeah, with a red dot. So I cleaned them all, and I go just to turn, and everybody's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, I got to give it a couple of tries here. And I mean, I was like 50 yards off. I mean, you could see the dust flying way before it. So I started correcting, but I took 3 or 4 shots. It wasn't going to happen.
You maybe should have run over there.
I still did.
Oh.
Because as long as, I figured I would burn up 3 or 4 seconds. If you get lucky and all of a sudden you hear a ping, then you only have 3 seconds to get back to the start line and next person can go, But that was fun because it really, if you ran, which Cal and I both did, it was enough that I busted a couple blood vessels in my lungs and was hacking for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Does that mean Clay didn't run?
Clay did not run.
He had boots on, He didn't. They don't have running shoes down there. In
You guys have
Arkansas.
cleats?
They just run in boots. So he didn't go quite as fast.
Corinne, tell everybody about the new podcast channel.
Okay.
There's a whole new channel?
There's a whole new channel.
Listen to what Corinne has to tell you.
There's a whole new
Corinne's
channel.
doing this because she knows more about it than I do.
So, the YouTube channel that most folks have been a part of for years is the MeatEater TV YouTube channel. And we've decided to create a new YouTube channel that's the home for all of our podcasts. So that's the only place where you'll be able to watch and listen to.
You're not really selling it.
Well, it's not her job.
Yeah.
She's a producer.
It's just kind of a real flat delivery here.
That's the only
Not a
place
job.
where
That
you'll
is-
be able to
thank
watch
you,
and
Randall.
listen to our podcast.
So go ahead and subscribe to the very new MeatEater Podcast
Do a take
Network
two, Corinne.
YouTube channel.
Wait. That's not the only place where you can listen to.
Watch it.
What? It's the only
Listen
place you can
and
watch
watch.
and listen.
Listen, she's a producer,
Gotcha.
man. She's
See,
not a. She's a
Randall
producer,
really
not a
should
pitch
have
man.
Done it for me.
Hit it one more time.
Okay, so everybody,
Okay, look, you want to back? Well, here. Hey, Corinne, tell everybody about the new channel.
we've got a great new, exciting YouTube podcast channel launching. It's where you can catch all of the MeatEater Network podcasts on video and audio. So please give us a subscribe. It's called the MeatEater Podcast Network on YouTube.
She tore a new one on that
Oh,
one.
big
Hear
time.
that?
Big time. What do people get to see there?
What's in it for me?
They get to see. Well, we're migrating away from the MeatEater TV, so YouTube channel. So if you want to watch this here podcast, that's where you watch it. If you want to watch trivia, that's where you watch it. If you want to watch Cal's interviews, Mark's Wired to Hunt, Foundations.
Yeah,
No,
Foundations.
Foundations is there now. Foundations, Cutting the Distance.
Will Houndations be there too?
Well, it will, and all of our podcasts that are not interview format, there might be a little visual treat. So, but that is the home
Yeah.
for all of our podcasts.
Like if I'm just FaceTiming Mark one day, we could put that up there.
That will be up there. That will
doing,
be
Mark?
up there.
Sign me up for that.
Gnome shirts are back in stock. Without even knowing we were doing this, I have my original.
You might want to
Wait,
specify
which ones?
GNOME, not NOEM, as we've been discussing on the podcast.
Huh, Gnome, like the town?
No, like
No, like
The governor?
Christie.
Oh,
that would be hilarious.
Life and death on the farm.
no. I would wear a Christy
Silent
Gnome.
G
I'd wear a
Gnome.
Christy
Yeah.
Gnome t-shirt.
Yeah,
Silent
Christy
James
Gnome
Gnome.
packing out
I'd
a
wear a
bird dog
Doug.
shirt.
I'd wear a Doug Burgum t-shirt. This
Cal, that was funny. Steve didn't hear that. That was funny.
tell me again.
Our Christy Gnome packing out a bird dog shirt.
That would sell. That would really be good.
Yeah, I'd wear a Gnome shirt.
Sorry, I've derailed us.
I'm wearing a Gnome shirt. This I have the original one on. Look at the hole in that armpit.
Yeah.
This is the Gnome packing out a unit. Why is this one not back?
Oh, I think it may be one of the ones.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
It is.
See, our t-shirt program was constantly they like burned through them.
It's dynamic.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm.
They burned through them. Oh, my kids went to a
That is
t-shirt.
the proper way to. I don't know why that word is so stuck in my head about how people use it.
prone to change.
right,
Dynamic?
but it is constantly used improper.
Yeah, like a dynamic video. That video's not changing.
Yeah. And when people are described dynamically most of the time, they're not trying to say that person changes all the time.
Oh, can I tell you something about something?
Oh, yeah. Steve got the finger out.
Listen to
Maybe
this.
smacked the
Fired
table.
I mean, if everybody just didn't lean in on that.
Listen,
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you something. You know what I did?
He
My
almost closed his computer there.
Corinne, can you remind
Nervous
me?
energy.
This is so
Dig in.
important. I almost closed my computer.
So
Corinne,
excited.
when we do Steve reads a book, so you ain't got to.
Yep.
Can you remind me to tell Yanni what I need to tell him
Yep.
Oh, so you're not telling us now?
in a minute?
All right. Stay tuned.
We
Can
got
you
like
imagine-
a couple more points.
So my kids were visiting their grandma, their maternal grandmother, and there's a t-shirt shop that she took them to. This is the way to go on a t-shirt shop. All the designs are on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hundreds of designs on the wall, tons of blank t-shirts. You pick the color shirt you want. You pick the design you want. The dude at the counter goes, burns the design into the shirt, hands it to the kid.
That's
That's
dangerous.
how you run a t-shirt program.
Dangerous for kids, though.
Our
I don't want that one. Oh.
No, if I remember right, I think they settled up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
They
way to do it.
settled up
Yeah.
before my kid had a steelhead burned onto a tie-dye hoodie.
That's good taste. I would wear that hoodie. Are
That's
you kidding me?
awesome. Yeah.
Maddie went with the steelhead burned onto a tie-dye hoodie.
love
We should
that.
get a little corner of the store downtown to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that.
Just burning shirts.
That's a cool
Yeah.
idea.
Good idea.
So we got the gnome packing out a dead unicorn. We got the gnome roasting a jackrabbit. And we got the gnome spearfishing.
Right. And there's a
The mermaid.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, fishing. It's a gnome jigging halibut, but he tied into a mermaid.
Oh, okay. Because I knew it wasn't like a gnome spearing
No.
a mermaid.
You're telling me that
He's doing battle. It's the gnome jigging halibut, but he hooked into a mermaid and he's doing battle with a mermaid.
I don't believe it that the mermaid took the same bait that the halibut.
No, she's foul hooked.
She's foul hooked?
She's trying to get the bait off the hook. I can't remember. We don't have her lip hooked.
I hope not.
How is she hooked in that? I don't think she's lip hooked.
Can you see the jig?
Fin
Is it
hook,
a
maybe? I
big
don't know.
twister tail?
Can you pull that up, Phil? How is she hooked? I remember debating this, and we
Actually,
didn't think
I'm
we
not-
wanted to have her lip hooked.
No, she's
Huh.
definitely
I
Yeah,
think
no.
maybe
Probably
her.
the best. Maybe
I
she's
think
holding
if
the
I
little
remember
too.
right. No. I think we
Little
settled on.
noise.
BDSM for the.
I think we
Yeah.
settled on her
Exactly.
position. Her position is such that I think we settled on this because we didn't want to get into any kind of
Yeah.
strange territory. I think we settled on that her position obfuscates
It does.
how
it's,
she's
it's,
hooked.
it's behind her body. You can't tell how
Oh,
she's hooked.
yeah, you
Gotcha.
can't-
That
yeah,
makes
you
But I think
can't
is she?
see it.
Does it make sense that she's lip hooked? Like she was eating the bait.
It's kind of
No.
I can't zoom in far enough. It's hard to tell.
I could picture her trying to grab it.
No, it disappears around the midsection of her tail, and you can't tell where it's hooked.
Yeah.
She's
It
maybe
could be,
foul
like,
hooked
on
in the
her
shoulder.
side,
Well, what about if
or-
she was saving the halibut, removing a hook from a halibut?
And then got hung up.
Yeah.
But
Like
what's
all
not
good
to
art,
say-
it's subjective, you know. We
What's
leave it
not to
open
say
your
that the gnome
interpretation.
was targeting mermaids?
That's what it's meant to. It's meant to be that only the artist knows.
Good job.
When I conceptualized
see
the
in it what you
idea,
want
it was
to.
he was jigging halibut but tied into a mermaid, and was glad about it. Some of the women in the
Does
some
he
of the women in
know?
the company pointed out,
He doesn't know.
is this
that he's tied
is this sexual in nature or is this like close to cannibalism in nature?
Depending on
And
how good of a
that's why he
fisherman.
hasn't caught it yet. Because if it was
It
caught,
leaves
you'd
the
have to
question.
wrestle. You'd have to wrestle with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
question.
Yeah, the what comes next.
Yeah.
question.
So what is he going to do with the mermaid? Is to the wearer's imagination.
yeah,
a
be
very
it
different
halibut or you know,
And isn't that
mermaid.
what
You don't.
great
It's
art
not
is?
caught until
You know?
it's in the boat.
You know.
Yeah,
now,
he
if
doesn't
we get
know.
that gaff
if we
through
get that
Sure, the
shot
head
where you can
shakes are
burn your
different.
own design.
Maybe we should have a painting contest to have that scene.
Oh.
The what happens next?
Renditions of that scene when
Yeah.
he catches her.
After the success of
contest
the
for
after the
listeners?
success of the essay contest,
Watercolor and
I
oil.
think that if you can look at the shirt design and then send in artwork showing what happened next.
What's
and,
that?
and
No
if, and then
mermaid
put
hybrid.
like if it winds up being reproductive in nature, put a caution.
I like that. Maybe we'll put it up on Steve's Instagram.
He's
There's
by himself,
really a
so he's not
winning-
yelling, "Get the gaff" to anyone.
Corinne also needs more outro music submissions. So we for 2024, that's the one we're in. We're doing all out. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. For a while, for a while we had outro. I don't even know what the hell we were using for outro music. For a long time, we had outro music from Shearwater. It's a band. Shearwater is a bird. There's a band there's an ornithologist who has a band called Shearwater. He used to study caracaras, but he had a song called Wildlife in America. And for a long time, our outro music was sort of an excerpt from Wildlife in America, which is actually about soldiers returning from the war in Iraq and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was the outro music. You wouldn't know any of that from listening to it, but that's what it was. Then one day we talked about something too long. And someone made a comment about
not just one day. Like
someone made a comment about like you beat that horse to death. So then we switched the outro music to Christopher Denny's Ride On, in which he says, "We've done beat this damn horse to death. It's time to ride on."
he'll be on the podcast soon, by the way.
People loved and hated that song. Christopher Denny one day somehow oblivious to the fact that we licensed his song.
Yep. That's a whole
It was a
little
hard
scandal.
negotiation, hard to get a hold of anybody. We licensed his song, and one day he writes in, "Hey, I see you're using my song." Like, that didn't happen easily. He doesn't even know we used his song. He's going to come on the podcast.
Yep.
He's going to come on the podcast and tell you everything that's wrong with the music industry.
He will.
When our license of that was running out, rather than renewing it, we did a thing where we're only using music that people send in because people always send in cool songs. And here we are halfway through the year. We need a refresh.
Right, but we need music that's not already floating around the internet. So if you guys want to take a little bit of time and write a podcast specific song or an ode to Steve or the outdoors, a lot of people did that.
We need originals.
Because here's the deal. Because you know how the podcast, you can watch the podcast on YouTube. If your music, even if you've licensed your music anywhere, if your music is on Spotify, whatever, they're gonna scrub it and ding us for a copyright infringement.
Released,
even if you're giving permission, it's still it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a hassle.
It's a pain in Corinne's butt.
It is.
So you got to give us music that you haven't published yet.
Right. And so like a couple of people,
you can still publish it later.
A couple of people just sat around and picked up a guitar or just started singing, and it was like an impromptu. There's one guy who wrote a song called Raccoon Pecker, or he didn't really write it. It was funny. It was
good.
great.
It's a great song.
And we played that.
Raccoon Pecker.
Yeah.
Where does Doug Duran's podcast blues go?
Trivia.
Oh.
We got one right now, our very own Dirt Myth. And every time I look at Dip Aficionado with Dirt when Dirt made the cover of Dip Aficionado, I still laugh.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's the best piece in here.
Dirt sent in a song. We always lately when we're goofing on Dirt, who's not here. Lately, the theme has been goofing on the noises Dirt makes while eating.
We love you,
We should have
Dirt.
him.
is amazing.
We should have him test the.
The peak refuel with Steve's face.
If
on the
we
mac
could
and
have
cheese.
Dirt eat that and
we
put
can
a
get
mic up to him.
Yeah.
This is next level.
And if you had
You
these-
can't buy this.
We should have dirt reviews.
You can't hear this, but he usually has 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, yeah. And if there were these 2 bags here and they sat long enough, he'd, with his last bite of this bag, he'd be like, I'm gonna hit another one. Is that cool?
No.
elbow
This is
chicken
next-
wing now.
This is next level. You go.
He eats the way if you walked into like a medieval tavern and you saw someone eating from a rough bowl.
Yes.
We already covered it, but my favorite thing is Dirt was talking about what his grandpa used for chapstick. He says grandpa uses his own earwax. He digs into his ear, gets a gob of wax, and rubs it on his lips.
Frugal family.
Oh yeah, Dirt said the only 2 things his dad's tried to make himself that he was never happy with is his dad was trying to make his own dip. Okay, he's trying to grow tobacco so to make his own dip. And then his dad was trying to make his own pellets for a pellet grill.
We love you,
That
Dirt.
frugal. Trying to make his own pellets for a pellet grill. We one time made a big dugout canoe out of a cottonwood log, and it was just killing Dirt's dad that we were going to leave it laying there. So he brought it home and turned it into a planter. There's just no way he was going to leave that thing. It's a perfectly good cracked hollow log. Open country. Are you gonna play a little bit, Phil? Just a little touch?
Yeah, it's over 5 minutes long.
No, I don't play the whole damn
gonna-
thing. Put the whole thing at the end of the show.
Oh yeah, we can. do
Okay,
that.
so Dirt wanted us to point out, being a good guy that he is, Dirt, this is in the notes, Dirt, : not Dirt's colon. I don't need to see that. Dirt, : make sure when you guys post about open country, that's Dirt's song. It's called Open Country. Dirt says it has a lot to say about the song. He also has this to say. This song you're about to hear, Open Country by Dirt, quote, has the core principles of why I do what I do. Amen to that shit, man. Dirt then went on to say, make sure when you guys posts about Open Country, my cousin, Andrew Smith, whose handle is Makeshift Radio, M-A-K Shift Radio, basically Mac Shift _ radio. So at MAKSHIFT _ radio. Gets mentioned for recording, mixing, and playing piano. Dirt continues. He's a great dude and has a Spotify. His stuff is very ethereal. And does cool sound mixing for a living. So with credit where credit is due, play a quick lick there, Phil, and then we'll come back. At the end of the show, we'll come back.
Give me a little fear. Something that inspires. Put me on the edge. That's what lights my fire.
Excellent. The lovely and talented Dirt Myth.
Can't wait to
What
hear
a
the
good
rest.
dude, man. If I had to pick between Dirt being alive and all you being alive, I'd pick Dirt.
That's understandable.
You know what I'm saying?
Great way
Dirt
to
is
do it.
a
And I
good
throw
dude.
myself into that mix. I'd rather Dirt be alive way more than me be alive.
Dirt would be the only person that would make you feel good somehow about everybody else being dead. You'd be like, but, you know.
I can't think of a single time in my life Dirt has ever gone negative.
No.
Oh, that gnome that tried to molest him in Ireland.
Oh, yeah, that guy that creeped him out big
Yeah,
time.
he didn't like that
That
guy.
pushed
he
him
didn't
over
like
the
that.
edge a little bit.
Other than that, Dirt's never gone negative. And he wasn't even entirely negative about the gnome.
He was looking at the bright
Not a
side.
gnome, a little leprechaun.
Leprechaun.
Yeah, a leprechaun tried to molest him.
Is the only logical conclusion that we could all come to. Parentheses.
It's obvious.
End. Yeah.
Everybody's laughing about my face being on the bag of a listen. My face being on the bag of a freeze dry meal. But let me tell you why I'm uniquely qualified to have my face on the bag of a freeze dry meal.
Please.
Ken, you're supposed to hold that, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I'm uniquely qualified and why this matters. Before any of you guys, when you guys were still getting milk from your mama's teat, I was eating freeze dry. Not only that, I was writing about freeze dry back when like astronauts knew about it. Many, many years ago, I wrote a piece for Outside, an exhaustively reported piece on freeze dry food. Like how it came into use, who the first users were. I got into the lerps from Vietnam. I got into space travel. I got into how space ice cream has gone to space, but no one ever chose to eat space ice cream in space.
They just eat it at the Kennedy Space Center like I do.
They didn't. They had it. They had it. And I got into how a favorite of the astronauts is shrimp cocktail. I went to a freeze-dry research facility, and the guy says, "We got everything in here. Try to think of something." And I just said, "I don't know." And I thought for a minute, and I said, "Capers." Got it. Freeze-dry. As part of my article, I had a bunch of people from the food industry come over, and we did a tasting of all kind of freeze-dry. Okay? I was like the original freeze-dry journalist. Well, I only did that one
That's a
piece.
cool beat.
I only did that one piece, but you know what I'm saying.
It was so encompassing.
You defined the genre.
I
The
defined.
be all and end all.
Yeah, it was like,
journalistic
you know, it was like a
authority.
mic drop.
Yeah.
But there's only so much you can say about freeze-dry. I said it. I went and visited a sublimation chamber. So when you're making freeze-dry, you make a meal that's ready. There's different ways of doing it. The right way to do it is you cook something that's ready to eat. You then spread it on trays and freeze it. And the temperature at which you freeze it, the humidity at which you freeze it, all matters a bunch. You then take that and put it in a sublimation chamber, pull a vacuum on it, and the water in there sublimates, meaning water goes from its solid state to its gaseous state. Never goes to a liquid state. When you pull these sheets out, you could break them like a pane of glass. Grind it all up, throw it in a sack. That's freeze-dry production in a nutshell. One thing I learned in the time I spent exploring freeze-dry is that certain things are good when you freeze-dry them and certain things ain't good when you freeze-dry them. When you go to these fancy pants, you know, everybody now has got some fancy pants freeze-dry, like 7 wild mushroom risotto. Listen, I like good food as much as the next guy. A lot of things aren't suitable to freeze dry. Meaning, if you made a freeze dry hamburger, what are you going to have when you rehydrate it? The burger bun doesn't know when to stop sucking up water. Right? Like if you want to rehydrate a cheeseburger, the bun it doesn't work. Like you need stuff that everything wants the same amount of soak. And that's the key to a good freeze dry meal. And just because 7 wild mushroom risotto is good at a restaurant doesn't mean it's good out of a sack. Like everything doesn't translate.
It needs a consistent saturation point.
And it's just certain efforts get wasted. Certain efforts get like certain flavors and textures and things that make things good. Once you freeze dry it and grind it up and throw it in a sack, it goes away. There's just certain things that work as freeze dry. And I'll tell you what works as freeze dry is American Buffalo beef barbecue mac and cheese. And then Janis to thank for this one. Should be Janis' face on that. American Buffalo goulash.
Instead of this guy right here, if you put your finger right here, you can act like he's talking.
Can you do that while I talk, Cal? Phil, can you zero in on that so it's me talking?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, ready, Cal?
You're not picking his nose?
Is it zoomed right, Phil?
Yeah, it's not zoomed, but I'm on Cal.
Here's why I use that. I'm a big supporter of the animal. I'm a big supporter of American Buffalo. 94% of the buffalo or bison in North America that exist today are privately owned. I don't like the captive service industry, none. There's no way I would do I would never like do a elk freeze dry, a venison freeze dry, because I don't like captive servants. But private owners saved the American buffalo from extinction. If it wasn't for private owners, like we would not have them at all or would barely have them. In terms of returning to the animals to the landscape, it's largely fallen to private landowners to return the animals to the landscape. So I support I like to support bison ranchers, bison farmers. That's why that's the way it is. And goulash is one of those things that works. Keep going, Cal. You're going to wear it. Cal's going to
wear a hole in that bag.
Goulash is one of those things that works as freeze dry. Do you know what I'm saying? I think it was Yanni's idea, wasn't it?
That was a long time ago, I think, when we
Janis, you're not looking at Steve in the eye.
When we did
my eyes are up here, Janis.
When we did submissions for flavors for freeze dry.
Yeah, so this is a meat that matters. If you got to buy a meat, it's the coolest meat to buy outside of wild caught salmon. But salmon, that's not a freeze dry food. I'm sure someone
Really?
does it. I don't think a salmon.
Because
is a
there's
good
salmon
freeze-
jerky.
Salmon jerky is good.
Freeze dried would probably be.
I think there is a.
Ne-
No, it's not freeze dried.
I'll tell you what's good
Dehydrated.
freeze dry. Red meat,
Salmon chowder.
Yeah.
red meat ground up. Ground up red meat.
But chicken does well.
I disagree.
And it doesn't
we
belong
can
in sausage, and it
agree.
doesn't belong on a pizza either.
Red meat ground
Okay.
up.
I agree with that.
Red meat ground up. That's why right here, when you want to go get a thinking man's freeze dry from a freeze dry expert, former freeze dry journalist.
If you're a thinking man and you want to look another thinking man in the eyes while you eat your freeze dry.
Now, listen.
If you want to have a conversation with your bag while you're alone in the hills, all you need is Cal's
Steve will
finger.
keep you company.
I'm
And you can talk
surprised
to
that
me.
it's just you and maybe not the crew on here, because one of our
That would
favorite
have made a hell of a lot more sense.
one of our favorite activities when we've eaten a lot of other freeze dries made by another company.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple people sitting around a stove, and they have these expressions that don't necessarily like let you know exactly what they're thinking or exactly what the joke is. And we have spent hours probably looking at these labels and deciding
what is going on.
what is going on there in that scene. And I think even though it's not quite the same, but this lends itself to the same thing. So if you want to have fun with your
true.
friends in the backcountry,
Cal pointed out that there's space there to do a dialogue bubble.
yeah,
Earlier.
Yeah,
like
you
for
can have me
example,
say whatever you want.
You could say,
let's say your name's
like
Bill.
this.
You could have my voice say, "What are you thinking about, Bill?" And then you could answer to the bag. while you're alone in the mountains. And I'm there to hear what you have to say.
What's he saying,
yeah.
What's in that speech bubble?
This is what I'm making for dinner tonight for my kids.
Do my art here.
This is another good meat eater contest right here.
Yeah.
If you're wondering about, they're both good. Look. If you're wondering about what my favorite, like,
what
am I saying there?
My spoon has 3 notches.
Okay.
I put 2 notches in my spoon.
But you have to do it in Steve's voice. If Steve was going to tell you how many notches his spoon has, how would it be, Cal?
Well, he'd be like, hey, who's got 3 notcher?
We're working down a list here. Okay, we talked about the podcast channel, talked about gnomes, we talked about why I'm qualified.
Kenyon.
Why I'm qualified to be on a mac and cheese box. Talked about music. Talked about dirt.
Working for wildlife.
Oh, Mark Kenyon.
Right after mac and cheese.
Yeah. You just did it in alphabetical order.
That's alphabetical.
Mac and cheese to Mark Kenyon. Hit it, Mark.
What am I talking about?
Oh. Aren't you going to tell us about the Working for Wildlife tour?
Yeah, I can do that.
Are you not prepared?
I am. I just didn't know if that was the thing. The Working for Wildlife tour is something I kicked off last year, which was kind of coming out of just a realization I had, just kind of looking out across the country and hearing about different volunteer events going on, being put on by BHA or the NDA or Trout Unlimited or whatever it is. You see a picture from one of these events, and there'd be like 6 people at them. And I thought to myself, man, these are such great events. There's such good work going on. I believe there's great things coming from them, but not enough folks hear about it. Not enough people are going out and doing these things. Mm-hmm. So I thought, what's some way we could help bring more attention to that and kind of inspire more folks to get out there and do it? So I decided I'll just start doing it myself. So this tour the idea is to go around the country, collaborating with various nonprofit organizations to help organize these events, promote these events, and then I go to them myself and volunteer all day with folks, meet everyone, talk to folks, have a great time, and document it all, and then tell those stories afterwards. So
what kind of projects?
I can attest. Let me tell you. I went to one last year down in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
We went down there and collected 5-gallon bucket upon 5-gallon bucket of white oak acorns, and those were collected to then be grown in a nursery, oak nursery.
If you live by Clay's house, he's talking about acorns.
Acorns, that's right. And then to be planted back into the Daniel Boone National Forest.
So where were you wandering around collecting acorns?
Daniel Boone National Forest.
And then they were gonna propagate them.
Yeah, some folks had scouted them, so they knew some spots to go to. It was very educational for me. As a deer hunter, it was cool. And the community aspect of it was great. I mean, you're sitting around literally sitting because there's so many of them. It's so thick. You can just sit down and collect acorns, and you're talking to people from the community.
Yeah. So instead of 6 people going out there collecting acorns, we had 60 or something like that.
No kidding.
And we collected between 700 and 800 pounds of these acorns.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Which were then propagated. I went and visited that nursery a couple weeks ago. We have 15,000 oak seedlings now growing.
Wow.
What was the success rate? Did you find out acorn like
what percentage actually?
Yeah, like what percent were viable and took and all that?
I don't know off the top of my head, no. But I do
you
know
must
that
have picked
that's
a hell of a lot more acorns than that.
Yeah. So 15,000 trees are growing. Saw them, and
That's
then
incredible.
we're going to go back next spring and help reforest parts of the
really
national
amazing.
forest. So that's an example.
How big do they got to get them before they put them back in the ground?
Well, right now they're about 6 inches tall. By next spring, I think it'll be more like a foot, give or take.
Are they worried about just the deer going to annihilate them?
That's definitely a thing. I don't know about what kind of protection they may or may not be using when we plant. But yeah, so that's an example.
Because Doug Dern will give you an earful about that.
You know something I learned down there? Did you know that when you find an acorn with the cap on it, it's an aborted acorn?
No.
Whoa.
What?
I was hoping he would. That's what we learned, right? They were like, if you can, pick up the ones that don't have their caps on them anymore.
Like it didn't come to maturity.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were searching out ones that didn't
acorn
have the
fights.
weevil.
I always preferred those ones,
And-
big old white with no cap.
Yeah, we were also looking to make sure there weren't weevil holes in them and stuff like that.
Yep.
And that they hadn't sprouted yet either.
yeah,
I think that
that
was
too.
something we looked for.
Which, when they went to the nursery, they probably put them all in water, and you can find out if they're viable or not, like by floating them.
Yeah.
I think the ones that aren't viable float. I think
that's right.
Yeah.
It was very cool. But we did that. We went 2 weeks ago. We were in Pennsylvania, and I got an email this morning, kind of that quantified what we did. 1,700 feet of like 10-foot tall fencing.
Let's keep going.
Was removed.
Oh my God.
14 bluebird boxes were installed. 2 wildlife planting fences were created.
You're on the air.
Can you put the phone in front of your phone in front of the microphone, Steve? The speaker. Yeah, right. Here you go.
If you find an acorn laying on the ground.
Not an acorn again.
Yeah. Me and Doug about quit being friends over an acorn fight one time. Listen, or acorn argument. If you find an acorn laying on the ground and his cap is still on him, does that mean it was aborted and it's not viable?
Complete conjecture. No.
But he qualified. Conjecture.
Yep. It means to me that it dropped early and that cap has to dry and fall off yet.
But it could still be viable.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Okay, so go on. Hit me with the stats.
Start with the stats from the top. We got sidetracked there.
So on this particular day, 2 weeks ago in Pennsylvania, we removed 1,700 feet of 10-foot tall fencing that was originally put up decades ago, back when...
How tall?
About 10 foot.
For what
8 to
the
10
hell
foot.
purpose was that?
So this is pretty interesting.
Was this on state?
10 foot.
This is National Forest.
National Forest.
Pennsylvania, back 20, 30 years ago, deer populations were so high that if you wanted any kind of regrowth at all,
They had to do an
they had to
exclosure.
fence them.
They still do it.
Mm-hmm.
On
Well, in
state
this
forest.
case, though, they don't want it
So they
there
did an
anymore.
exclosure and it just decayed and...
Yep, and now
Got
it's
it.
keeping deer and other wildlife out of an area they want them in.
Got it.
So we removed almost 2,000 feet of that, which was a job. Planted 50 trees and shrubs, installed 14 bluebird boxes, planted 25 button bushes, and then installed a new set of 240 feet of fencing around some of these new plantings to protect them in those early growth stages. So we've done things like that. We were in Massachusetts outside of Boston. We collected literally a ton, 2,000 pounds of trash on a WMA. We worked on aspen stand restorations in northern Idaho. We created, I think, 18 brush piles for small game habitat and improved 16 acres of openings in a state forest in northern Michigan. We did a great project in Mississippi on can't remember the name of the national forest down there, but planted something like 250 apple trees, worked on gopher tortoise habitat. There was all these different kinds of very cool projects. You learn a lot. You meet an incredible number of like-minded people, and you come away from these events just full. Like your cup is full, all this new energy.
It's great.
And
that's cool.
really, really cool stories. Like I've heard so many stories from people that went to an event like this having never participated in something like that before, never really thought they'd want to, but heard about it like, oh, sure, I'll go give it a shot. And it leads to the snowball effect with more and more things happening. So I just met a guy, didn't meet him, saw him again at the BHA rendezvous. He comes up to me and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. We met at the event outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I never participated, never volunteered before, but I did it, came out there, came away from that feeling so charged up and wanting to do more. I decided to get involved with that local chapter of BHA, asked if there's any more events. Well, there were some more things, started going to those. I enjoyed that so much more. When I found out there was an opening on the state board, I joined and became a state board member. I did that for the rest of the year. I have become so charged up with what this has led to that now I'm retiring from the Navy. He's being discharged. It's the end there in this summer. Honorably. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. And he is...
They said, you're private? You're too into conservation.
Well, so much so that he is now pursuing a full-time career in conservation. That would not have happened if it hadn't been that.
That's great,
And
Mark.
so there's been like
Nice.
multiple things like
That's
that
so
are
cool.
very exciting, and we're hoping to keep them going. So we've done 8 events in the last 13 months so far, Another one,
That's
the
a
next
lot.
one coming up is this August in northern Minnesota.
What's that one?
That is going to be doing 2 big projects just outside the boundary waters. One, we will be creating a access point for hunters and anglers and campers entering this part. It's on Vermilion Lake, I believe. So helping create a access point for recreators, and then creating whitetail and other wildlife wintering habitat by planting conifer trees in a WMA, I believe, up there as well.
And Mark, if people want to get involved, where do they go? On our website or on Wire to Hunt?
Yeah,
website
so
on...
probably the simplest way is just to Google Working for Wildlife Tour, or go to the MeatEater website and search that too. There's an article there that links to the details for every one of the events so far this year. But yeah, would love to see more folks at that northern Minnesota one, and hopefully we'll do more next year.
It's awesome, Mark.
Thank you.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. And everybody go give Mark a listen or a watch on the new Podcast Network channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's host of the Wire to Hunt podcast.
Got any target bucks going on we need to hear about?
Well, I do have to say real quick for those paying attention to Mark, I had people write in to the Ask Cal email making sure Mark's okay.
Why, what's wrong with him?
Mark's in training running mode, so he's looking slim and trim, and then he
I know you've been running.
Shaved his mustache off.
Yeah.
And
to get better aerodynamic.
And people went around him and came to me and said, I hope he's doing okay. He looks too skinny.
So you've been running so much you got skinny.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah,
Well,
the mustache
welcome to
takes
the club, man.
takes 10
Not
pounds.
the running club, the skinny club.
The skinny club, yeah. 10 pounds and 10 years off, I guess, with the mustache. So not as fast as Yanni, but I'm getting there.
You don't know that.
Dude, not as fast as the gals I was watching at the barbershop yesterday in the track and field tournament.
Definitely not.
My goodness.
I'm more slow, but long distance.
Like a turtle.
Keep her moving.
Okay, back to the bucks.
Back to the bucks.
Oh, yeah, you got any is it, yeah, where are you at on target bucks?
How
much
deep
can
are you in the list of names that you have to choose from?
How good are you, too? I got another question. Before you answer that, I got a question for you. How good are you? You know when you start seeing bucks coming into velvet?
Yeah.
Like the other day, my neighbor sends me a picture. Looks promising.
Yeah.
You know? And you just look, it looks like 2 beer cans coming out of his head, all velvety.
Yeah.
At what point do you feel like you can look, by what date, say in the Midwest, by what date can you look at a velvety buck and go like, that's looking good?
Well, I was able to do that before I left Michigan last week of May, first week of June.
Already.
Yeah.
Like what you say, like by what I'm seeing, this is looking promising.
Like I saw a buck I got pictures of and saw him probably June 1st-ish.
Mhm.
And I not only knew that buck's going to be a buck, but I knew the buck.
What are you looking at?
You're looking at, really what you're seeing is you develop like a reference point for how much a deer has grown by a typical point. And you'll start to see like, man, if a deer, like I know from 2018 that this certain buck was a 5-year-old buck and he ended up being like X big.
Yeah.
And I know he ended up like this. I'll look back at his pictures on May 31st or June 1st and I'll see what he looked like back then.
And see what he had going on
If
then.
you do that enough times, you start to be able to identify. So like I saw a buck the other day that you can see right now on, end of May, beginning of June, well past the ears, very substantial brow tines, a lot of mass, starting to branch out into, 3-4 points at the ends. And you can usually, if you hunt a small area, you see the same deer over and over and over again.
That's a good point.
So you can
I know
tell.
in the past what he looked like on May 31st, and I know where he landed.
Yeah.
So if I can look at him now on May 31st.
And it's like if you people are always wondering, like, how do you know it's that buck? How can you tell that this buck's different from that one? It's just like if you have
the ear tags.
Like if you see my, yeah, that would do it. Like my 2 boys. If one of you saw my 2 sons,
how do you know that's
right.
James?
They both look the same to any random person, but to me it's so obvious. Well, when I see like the brow tines of a deer, like I knew this buck, I saw like instantly. He's only got the beginning of his antlers, but I saw instantly recognize the brow tine structure and width. I was like, oh, that's this deer.
Yeah,
he's back. And so that deer.
And it probably helps that he's like.
Why are you not using
lives
his
where he
first
lives?
name?
What is his name?
Bulldozer.
and God, Mark, it never ends. Man.
Hear me out.
Why not Kaiser Wilhelm?
I love
Hear me out.
Of course,
Ryan
it's
asked
named
how the
Bulldozer.
names come up. I don't name my deer anymore. I don't name.
Who named
first,
that?
They're not my
Your
deer.
kids name them?
The kids do it.
that's a
So
good idea.
the kids get excited. They see a picture. We go out there and actually glass up the deer and watch deer, and then the kids just like, let's call them that. It's fun for the kids. The kids feel like they feel like they're part of it.
Do they ever argue about it?
Just between themselves.
Yeah.
Like they'll argue who gets to have the rights to a given deer's name.
You want to see some fighting kids? I took my kids out bow fishing the other day, but only brought one bow. Good Lord.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mark and I have been.
In my head, I was like, how many carp do I really want to deal with? So I wanted to take them out. I was like, we're going to catch carp. We're going to flay them. We'll use them for bait. We'll make some fish cakes, whatever. So I was like, we'll just bring one bow. My God. Just fighting.
Yeah.
Mark and I were
Off that
talking
boat.
the other week about getting together and doing some angling.
Uh-huh.
But off of this conversation, I have a ulterior motive by I want to get your kids aside and be like, listen, here's a couple of good name suggestions. So Mark has to come back on the show and be like, Queen Elizabeth is dead.
Yeah.
What did Bulldozer do to pick up the name Bulldozer?
Literally nothing. I think my son just probably was watching a TV show or saw a picture of a bulldozer 20 minutes beforehand, and then that deer was bulldozer.
Free association.
Yes. My other, I think I told you guys this a few months ago.
Are you going to try to kill that buck this year?
Yeah, he'll be the number one.
Cool.
My youngest son didn't really find I found the sheds, but left them there, and then went back later when he was around.
To
picked
trick
him up
him
at
into
school,
finding them?
helped him find it.
Yeah.
And so he's very excited that he found Bulldozer's antler. That's just fun stuff with your kids.
It's great, man.
And yeah, it's very cool now. Like my kids are hunting with me. I can actually share these experiences with them in the wild. The first deer I shot with my son Everett happened this past winter. And so he got to be there for the whole thing, did amazing, and helped gut it, helped drag it, whole 9 yards. But that buck, Bulldozer, actually came out that same night. So we got to see that buck, encounter that deer together, waited till he left, then took a doe. So very fun.
Great. How old are your boys now?
6 and 4.
You squirrel hunting yet with them?
Mark's not a squirrel hunter.
I would say not like officially squirrel hunting. He carries around a BB gun a lot, and he's done a little damage. And then he's also been on groundhog duty with a 17, which he's done very well with. We had a problem.
You got plans for squirrel hunting?
I'm sure he will. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yeah.
He should come out and ground hunt. My boy's got a real hot ground squirrel permission right now.
He would love it.
And they kind of turned it into like that the people that have him doing this have turned it into that he's single-handedly saving their horses through a rather convoluted process. You'll appreciate this, Randall, because it involves a badger. Their take is that they got too many ground squirrels, which lures in badgers, which dig holes, which are going to kill the horses. Therefore,
one thing
he is
leads to
saving
another.
horses, which is all he needed to hear. What he needed to hear was he gets to hunt ground squirrels,
right?
But he needed a way to sell it to the old man. And upon hearing this heart-rendering story about saving the family's horses, how could I say no?
Great logic.
And it got him out of needing to eat those squirrels.
Listen, Dad, this
Everybody
is
wins.
eradication, okay? It's a job.
So my kids have now, I've kind of wrestled with that question of like, I want them to get experience doing these things, but at the same time, you can't just wantonly shoot a bunch of stuff. So one part of the process now, like if we shoot a groundhog, we have to dissect it, learn all about it, and then a fun new thing we're doing is seeing what happens afterwards. So we go and we'll leave like a part of the groundhog carcass out in the woods and then set up trail cameras on it.
There you go.
To then watch and see what
who
comes up
and
next.
nabs it.
Who's going to use this next? And how does that change over 2 weeks versus 6 weeks?
It's a good idea.
And that's been fun.
That's
Fun
cool.
thing.
That's real cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If Mark was everybody's dad, the world wouldn't be such a mess.
Yeah, Mark should be like science teacher.
I'd like that.
You should have more kids, Mark.
We're done, Steve. Officially.
Oh, really? You got the...
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about when I had that done?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I ever tell you about when I had it done?
Did it go well?
No.
Oh,
I'm telling way too many people.
Is this why you're
with
so
podcast.
skinny?
How long ago did you have it done?
2 years ago.
Okay.
Well, which one?
oh, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh,
The right one.
Ooh.
I had to have it done twice. Yeah.
oh.
Really?
Yeah.
When they
Sue
were
your
telling me that, I'm like,
doctor.
well, how in the world is that possible?
I don't know how it
I'm
does.
surprised you don't have a third kid.
I've got super stuff.
They couldn't kill it.
They couldn't kill it. Couldn't seal it up. I'm insatiable.
So I tried to stop the Columbia.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. They did.
You have to get stuff tested, you know? And
Yeah,
my test
yeah.
never came back negative.
Really?
Oh, wow.
And twice.
Same doctor? Did you be like, oh,
Well,
the
I
first
did
one messed
seriously
up,
wonder,
so-
like, should I go to somebody
Yeah.
else?
That to me was the worst part about the whole process. It wasn't getting it done, and then like the couple days afterwards where you're stuck on the couch. But like every whatever it is, 3 days where you gotta walk in there and be like,
Turn your sample in.
yeah,
Yeah.
5, 6 times, and then they're like, keep trying.
I remember when they finally called me. I remember they said, the guy that called me, he was military, and he thought I was military because I called him sir. And I had to clear that up eventually. But he calls, congratulations. I'm like, what happened? Test came back negative. So you kept throwing samples and they were positive.
Yeah.
So you had like a bifurcated canal.
I don't know how it works, but didn't work right. And then it became a situation where I didn't want to get it done again because I just didn't enjoy the first time, but I kept on being
You
like,
didn't
I know.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
You didn't enjoy someone cutting into your scroll and
Strangely not.
tying little knots in.
Were you able to work in like a 2-for-1 type of pricing?
I should have, but no.
Oh.
Did they charge you for the redo?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
No, they did not.
They did too.
Oh, God.
I mean, insurance.
Did he find a second tube?
I apparently should have asked a lot more questions. But no, I just showed up kind of with a sullen look on my face and said, all right, here I am, Doc. Let's do it again. And he said, like, yeah, this should definitely do it this time. And it did. But what happened, I
I'd
procrastinated.
be like, what's
We're
that
really
mean?
gonna get that
What
thing
more
this
did you
time.
cut
Your
off?
accountability with me is really
Look,
bad.
look.
I don't like going down there with those samples, man.
Yeah, no,
Look,
nobody
if
does.
Kevin Wilkerson's thumb can grow back from nothing to a full thumb with a nail and everything,
What?
then I don't see.
I was going to say, no wonder you're so confident to shave your mustache. You know it's going to grow back.
No, trust me. They'll grow back.
Yeah.
So no more little Mark Kenyons on the horizon.
No more.
Man, I miss those little babies now, man.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
I don't miss that early
I kind of
early
want to
stage.
adopt a little baby, maybe.
Give me 2 years old, not 6 months.
You see how bad I'm dying to talk about this book.
Let's talk about the book.
We got a new segment. Hold on before you start
Oh.
or say the name. We got to play the drop.
Do you got the drop ready, Phil? Can
Drop's ready.
you play it for everybody?
Yeah, sure.
It's time for Steve Reads Books, so you ain't got to.
That's right. It's
Oh,
time for
that was
Steve
Katie.
Reads Books, so you ain't got to.
Nice.
I'm surprised you let her use ain't.
She didn't want to.
Oh, you wanted her to use it.
I said, you need to say this. You need to say in a real sexy voice, it's time for Steve Reads Books, so you ain't got to. And she said, it's time for Steve Reads Books, so you don't have to. And I said, no.
Good try.
Because it's not appealing to the right audience. The kind of person that doesn't want to read books doesn't want to read books because they ain't got to. Right? So you're trying to sell it to the right audience. This only came up because I read a book. When we were on the live show, the live tour, a guy gave me a book, Vaquero of the Brush Country, and I realized how could the world's greatest book I had never heard of. And I liked that book, and I told people the best parts. And so I came up with this idea that what I could do from now on, like as a future business line when I retire or whatever, is read books so you ain't got to. This doozy. Listen.
Above the Arctic Circle.
Oh, can I talk about something different first? A friend of mine wrote this. Look at this book. I'm not going to read this so you ain't got to because it's a guidebook. Bill Carmen, was with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Check this out. Talk about a novel idea. Fishing with Daniel Boone. Fly fishing the streams of an American hero. So if you're into Daniel Boone lore about like, oh, you know, one day he killed 17 bears on the Big Sandy or was raised on the Upper Yadkin, whatever, he lays out how you can go fish those places. So you can fish there and then read all about what happened there. So-and-so got killed right over yonder. Try a pheasant tail.
Shoot at him.
Nightcrawler.
That's a great idea for the book. If you live around Kentucky, Tennessee, Kentucky in particular, and you like to fish, this will infuse all your fishing with all kinds of history.
It's almost like a roadside geology type of take, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I call him Bill Carmen, William F. Carmen. Fly fishing the streams of an American hero.
And then you're kind of ripping off like Cliff's notes for your idea, right?
Well, no, because I don't actually, when I do this segment, Steve reads books, so you ain't got to. I'm just telling you the parts that really grab me. It's not like a summation of what goes on. But I'll tell you, this is a guy, James A. Carroll, the Alaska Journals of James A. Carroll, 1911 1922. He's a cook. He cooks at logging camps in Minnesota and eventually winds up in Alaska. So he winds up in Alaska. I need to put my spectacles on. He winds up in Alaska in 1911, seeking work as a cook, but becomes a fur trapper. And has a lot of amazing adventures. And what I like about the book in particular is he looks at everything through a food lens. He's very astute about food. He gets into at one point one of his cooking techniques. He's bragging up how good he is at cooking. I could bake anything with the reflector. Pies, biscuits, etc. I used to cook our beans in a bean hole. Ready for this? I used to cook our beans in a bean hole. This bean hole was made by digging a hole in the ground 3 feet by 2 feet. I would fill this hole full of small cut wood. When all the wood burned down to hot coals, I would rake a hole in these hot coals and set the bean pot into the center and rake the hot coals back over the pot. Then I would cover it all over with 6 or 8 inches of dirt. You know why this turns out so good? He says he buries it so deep, quote, none of the flavors could escape. Okay, ready for this? This is when he's up in Alaska. He's got a guy he hangs out with named Riger, who raises hogs, okay? In the early evening hours, Riger, this is all on the Yukon. In the early evening hours, Riger invited me down to the riverbank. He wanted to show me how he fed his hogs. He wanted to show me how he fed his hogs right from the river. Birch Creek teemed with fish of all kinds, predominantly pike. As soon as Riger reached for his fishing pole, it would alert all the pigs, and they would come running from all directions. Sometimes they would run between his legs and nearly trip Riger. It seemed almost as soon as Riger's spoon hit the water, a pike would grab it. Riger had a club to kill the fish as soon as he dragged it to shore. In the meantime, the pigs were all squealing up and down the bank, waiting for their supper of fish. The hogs would fight over the pike. It would take him about an hour. Now I'm skipping ahead. It would take him about an hour to feed his herd of hogs. Now he dubs this Operation Riger's Ranch.
I wonder if those hogs were fishy tasting.
Well, funny you should ask. Listen to this tidbit. Okay, hold on a minute. So hold that in mind for me, because there's another food tidbit. No, I'll get to your question.
Okay.
They got a guy in their camp that doesn't want to eat bear meat. Says he can't eat bear meat. So James Carroll, the author, kills a bear and he's going to serve it. But there's this guy that doesn't want to eat bear meat. So James Carroll cooks a bunch of bear meat. Says, he had a camp hunter. Bill Hogshead was the camp hunter. Brings a small black bear into camp. He's going to make a pot roast out of the bear. Okay. So he cuts the bear's ribs into short ribs, puts them in a pot. The guy that comes in that doesn't like bear meat asks what's in a pot. He tells him it's short ribs from Riger's Ranch. He says, no, it's not. Don't smell like fish. On the night we camped with Mr. Stead, he fried us up a lot of caribou steak for our supper. Being a cook myself, I observed how he went about preparing it. While Stead stood over the cook stove watching the steaks of caribou cook, he would comb his beard with the same fork he turned the steaks with. He did this unconsciously. I learned a new wrinkle about bread baking from Stead. He had a large batch of bread raising in a big tin dishpan with a yellow tomcat sleeping on top of the dough. I thought the cat was sleeping where it shouldn't, so I told Stead the cat was sleeping on his bread. Oh, that's nothing. There is always a dishcloth between the dough and the cat to keep the dough clean. The narrator complains to another guy about it. The guy says, that's where the cat always sleeps. Ready for this? There's a guy that splits wood in town in Fort Yukon. He splits and sells wood to people in town, but someone keeps horking the wood off his pile. He takes an auger bit and drills out a bunch of wood and packs it full of gunpowder and sets it on top of the pile. Quickly finds the thief. Burns the thief's house down. What else? Here's something I was going to talk about, then scratched it out, which makes me wonder what it was. Ready for this? He would get as drunk as a boiled owl.
I've only seen Mark as drunk as a boiled owl one time.
The other day, I said, I was in the Vaquero of the Brush Country. Oh, Corinne, you forgot to remind me.
I was just going to remind you.
Okay, there's two things from Vaquero of a Brush Country that I didn't tell people about. You know when you call a buck old mossy horns? Uh-huh. You familiar with this from Michigan?
Yeah.
I used to think that when you called a buck old mossy horns, people were losing track of the fact that bucks shed their antlers. And we would say, that's where old mossy horns lives. Like when you hear old mossy horns being from Michigan, what do you think you're saying about that buck?
Big old swamp buck.
Yep.
Old is the biggest thing.
And so old and big that he had
Muskrat on his antlers.
You know what it means?
What?
I learned this in Vaquero of the Brush Country. When a longhorn gets old, the sheen on that horn starts to break apart. Like he's got smooth horn, but growing from the base outward, eventually it gets like that sheen breaks and it gets kind of crumbly over time from exposure to the sun and weather. And he becomes old mossy horns. He's so old that it becomes like a brittly kind of hairy coating on that horn. That's what old mossy horns is.
That is interesting.
He also says, there was more of something than fiddlers in hell. Drunk as a boiled owl. Here he's trapping. He traps. You know when you hear about caribou herds, the porcupine herd? He's trapping the Porcupine River. I remember one time I had 3 poor and damaged cross fox. One had no tail, one had no head. The third one had badly rubbed hips. I told Jack that I was going to try to make a whole cross fox from these 3 damaged ones. Jack didn't think much of the idea. One of the fox had a good head and shoulders, one had good hips, and the third one had a good tail and hips. I trimmed off all the ragged edges and rubbed pieces. I was good at sewing, considering the short experience I had had the past winter. I simply sewed the head and shoulders together, and then I fastened on the good hips and tail and pulled it loosely over a stretcher. The whole fox pelt was probably a little shorter than average length. When we were showing our collection of furs to a fur buyer, he picked up this tailor-made cross fox first, shook it out, and said, "Now that's what I call a nice little cross." You ready for this? After we arrived in town, I stayed at Jim Haley's Roadhouse for a month. Old Jim was a great soup maker. He had a large... Don't laugh. He had a large 7-gallon soup kettle that he always kept full of soup. It's not funny. I often wondered afterwards how he kept so much soup on hand without it souring on him. He must have kept adding soda to it. He used to put all kinds of small game in his soup, such as squirrels, ducks, ground squirrels, rabbits, and sometimes a piece of moot or caribou meat that the Indians happened to bring in. They were all good to Jim in this respect. Jim always had soup to serve any time of the day or night. One time, Jim had his soup pot and slop bucket sitting side by side.
Uh-oh.
By mistake, a fellow by the name of White emptied his wash basin in Jim's soup pot instead of the slop bucket. His soup was still as popular as ever. Ready for this? I remember Curly Well and I stopped at Schumann's overnight. We told him we would like to get an early start in the morning. Schumann set his alarm clock to ring at 4 o'clock. When the alarm went off, it woke me up too. So I lay awake in bed until breakfast was ready. Schumann got right up and made a hot fire in a big cast iron flat top heater he had. I watched Schumann all the time. He didn't know it. First thing he did toward cooking our breakfast was to spit a mouthful of tobacco juice on top of his cast iron heater. After this burned out dry, he made our toast on the same stove. As soon as Curly got up, I told him of the incident. Schumann wanted to know why we were not hungry that morning. We told him we had drunk some bad whiskey the evening before and that we would settle for a cup of coffee. Ready for this? That's not that interesting. Oh, no, it is interesting. In August 1912 and it's a historical tidbit. In August 1912 and 1913, I decided to pull out for the trap line. The outfit of Grub Bean Cook advanced me. The outfit of grub, the outfit of food, Bean Cook advanced me amounted to $130. I never took any bacon or lard with me. I figured on using bear for bacon and lard. Of some old guys, now this guy's the toughest guy on the planet, but he's talking about the guys that are really tough. He says this of them. The old timers. So this is the old timers at that time. They lived tough, ate tough, and died hard. That's what I would like written on my tombstone when I'm buried in the Twin Lakes Cemetery. Ready for another one? This guy he's moose hunting, and he's talking about how he'll rake in moose pre-rut. Still a practice, still used today. You take up scapula or an antler or whatever, and right, rake brush. He believes this. He believes that moose, this is an interesting belief. Brown bears, he says, hunt moose the same way. Sometimes a brown bear will fool a moose by clawing at a dry, hollow tree. A moose, generally on the run, runs in the direction of such a sound. The bear charges the moose that has run right to him.
Wow.
I don't believe that.
Remind me to tell you a hot tip when we're done here about moose hunting. I can't remember if I told you.
He's checking. They're scouting for trapping sign, and his buddy Deagle. Every time they find a mink track, he gets down and smells that track. He says he can smell whether it's fresh. He's got sled dogs when he's trapping, and he feeds them mostly fish. After I got home, I did some fishing with a gaff hook, and I hooked out 500 dog salmon.
Jeez.
One day he hooks out 800 dog salmon with a gaff.
And he refers to it as some fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Did some fishing. I didn't dedicate a day to it.
There was no law in Fort Yukon. He's talking about the winter of 1912, 1913. And they bring in a U.S. commissioner who now is supposed to like assume control of Fort Yukon. He comes into town and he's got a number of people that he's got for land injunctions. Basically, he's got a couple people he's going to prosecute for living on land they don't own. And he decides to prosecute some other people for illegal cohabitation. Living with their girlfriend. Does 2 indictments. Subpoenas all 50 residents of Fort Yukon in the winter. Makes all 50 residents of Fort Yukon travel to Fairbanks for these trials. The jury in Fairbanks acquits everyone, and they send the whole town back home.
Jeez.
Got nothing out of it. When he left, he had some lynx he hadn't skinned yet, and he put them in his bed wrapped up in his blanket. But he says he got back and they were still frozen stiff. Maybe this? Talking about the winter of 1910, 1911. He's trapping. I got home early that evening. Before I left the cabin that morning, I had left a partly frozen lynx wrapped up in my bed. This was to prevent it from freezing harder. I wanted to get the lynx thawed out so I could skin it out for its pelt. Lynx have thousands of fleas on them even when the flesh is partly frozen. As soon as the cabin warms up, the fleas leave the cat and get all over one's blankets and clothes. The marshal, this is the marshal there to serve him a subpoena, the marshal got quite a jolt when I unwrapped the dead frozen lynx from my bedding. David nearly laughed his head off. They both stayed with me that night. They told me in the morning that the fleas nearly ate them up alive and that they hadn't slept a wink all night from scratching. Well, I said, they kept me awake all night too. What's this here? He's drinking with a guy named Doc. And they got a bottle of whiskey in little glasses. And he says, Doc had a method. I don't need to drink it so I can explain it. Doc had a method that he had a small shot glass and huge fingers. And he could wrap his fingers so tight around the shot glass that he said they acted as sideboards. And he could fit more whiskey in his cup by creating extra volume around his cup just with his fingers. And then would walk away from the bottle. It's not funny.
I like how the flea deal is just like implies that this is just the way it is. Like,
yep. I got bit up too.
I got to deal with the fleas. There's no changing this method.
Now he's married and he traps with his wife Fanny. They go out for a whole season. Our catch for the season consisted of 46 lynx, 23 mink, 70 marten. He later goes on to say what he got at the fur buyer. So they go out for the winter, and I did one of those little inflation adjusters, which are kind of inaccurate. But he and his wife go out and trap. They catch, again, 46 lynx, 23 mink, 70 marten. With an inflation adjuster, they made $44,000 that winter trapping. Here's a little bit of the ingenuity of these guys. It's the 12th of April. Okay, they've gone up to trap. It's 12th of April and it's time to come home. Luckily, we had a large-sized toboggan. It was 16 inches wide, 9 feet long, and made of hickory boards, 12 feet long and 4 inches wide. The stores those days sold this hickory and also maple boards to the trappers to make their toboggans with. I used to make my own. I had a form to bend the boards on after they had been steamed. For a steamer, I used a 5-gallon oil can and 2 stovepipes. I fitted the pipe in one end of the can, filled the can full of water, and set it on a campfire to boil. I shoved the 4 boards down the stovepipe to the bottom of the can. I stuffed some gunny sacks in the cracks around the top of the stovepipe to keep the steam in. In about 3 hours, one could bend the steamed ends like rubber. After the boards dried on the form, I fastened them with cross pieces. I made a basket from a partly tanned big moose hide, the full length of the toboggan. I had lash loops all around the top of the basket to lash the load down. We loaded the lynx in the toboggan first. They were the most bulky. The marten and mink one could get in a big gunny sack. We had a top-heavy load. The next year, check this out. The next year, guess how many lynx he catches? The whole country came alive with lynx and rabbits. Next year, he catches 225 lynx with his wife in one season. So that was the amount of jingle he was making at that time. There's one other couple things. Should I keep going or is this too?
I love it.
Oh, Randall likes it.
I'm enthralled.
I don't know why I started that. Oh. Right now, muskrats are worth a couple bucks, $2, $3. 1919, 1920. Guess what muskrats are bringing? $4 a piece.
Wow.
He and his wife spend a month traveling through the winter to trap the Crow River Flats. They spend the whole winter, they spend the whole spring there trapping and shooting. They trap and shoot 1,600 muskrats with 3 babies with them.
Wow. Jeez. That's some serious cash.
Yep. Last thing I'm going to tell you is this. This guy he traps with. Curtis. Curtis had his own tent and stove. In the grub line, Curtis traveled light. He lived off the country mostly. When he arrived at the flats, this is when they actually travel in. Here's what's funny. They're traveling by dog sled. They cross into Canada. They have to stop and go through customs. There's a camp that has 2 Mounties there, and they got to pay duties on all their stuff. And you pay duties on your sled dogs, but you get the money back if they come back alive. And there's guys that live there just to monitor trappers coming over the pass from the Yukon to go into the Crow River Flats to trap muskrats. Curtis had his own tent and stove. In the grub line, Curtis traveled light. He lived off the country mostly. When he arrived at the flats, he had 15 pounds of flour, 5 pounds of sugar, 1 can of lard, 1 pound of coffee, 2 pounds of butter, 6 cans of milk, 1/2 pound of tea, and 1 pound of salt. He gave us his butter, coffee, and milk. We didn't want to take this from him, but he insisted we take it and said rats and flour were all he wanted to eat. He wouldn't accept anything for it. We used to have him eat with us quite often. It didn't take much to satisfy Curtis. I used to visit Curtis often to hear him talk. Our tents were close together. One day I was in his tent when he cooked a batch of rats. He dressed out 10 rats and stuck them in a 5-gallon coal oil can. This coal oil can and a couple of lard cans were all the cooking dishes he had. He put the rats in this 5-gallon can heads down with their tails hanging over the sides of the can about 4 inches.
We should try that.
He added water and let them boil for 1 hour. Then he reversed them, tails down, heads up. This gave the tails a chance to cook. The tails of the rats are very good eating when boiled or cooked over a campfire. 8 tails with a small piece of bannock makes feed for a person. After cooking them another half hour, he would thicken the juice with a cup of flour, making a thick white gravy. This concoction would last Curtis for 3 days. Whenever he wanted to eat a meal, he would fork out of the can a whole rat together with some white gravy. This didn't allow much variety, but Curtis seemed to relish it. Rats for breakfast, dinner, and supper. When a person is hungry and a long way from a store, anything tastes good, no matter how many times one eats the same thing. Behind Curtis' sheet iron stove in his tent, he had a pile of rat bones as big as a large rat house. These were the bones from all the rats he had eaten recently. The last thing I'll tell you about Curtis, he When they get done with trapping season, they go back to Fort Yukon. Curtis brings 2 large gunny sacks full of dried rats that he can eat during the summer.
I think
Wow.
we
Tough
should
man.
adopt a recipe like this in the next MeatEater outdoor cookbook, and then when we do like a podcast like we did this year, Randall can be the rat cooker.
Oh,
I think we
should
could
just bring them in and cook them right here.
And get Dirt in on it. Dirt would love the
dude,
Curtis
this next
special.
Bring it full circle.
Steve, when you read a book just for yourself, not for the podcast, do you?
I wasn't reading that for the podcast.
Okay, so my question is, I kind of see over your shoulder though, like you've notated it. You've got lines on the sides, you've got stars, you've got some things underlined. Do you do that in any book you read, or just did you come back to this book and say, "Oh, I want to talk about this piece"?
Well, if I don't have my pen handy, I just fold all the pages. Then I come back and mark it. But I generally like to read with my pen.
Interesting.
And I mark all the parts that titillate me.
It's a great word.
And then remember, everybody, that was a segment called.
Oh, Corinne, I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's time for Steve Reads Books, so you ain't got to.
That'll be a recurring segment moving
Part of
forward.
why I'm reading this book is we're working on our MeatEater's American History. So we did the Long Hunters. The next we're going to do the Mountain Men. After the Mountain Men, we're going to do the Buffalo Hide Hunters. At some point, we have 5 of them to go. We have 5 to go.
5, including the Mountain Men.
Holy cow.
At some point, I want to do the Last Frontier. And like they're bracketed. So the Long Hunters is 1766 to 1775.
Yeah, 61 or 63 to 75. I don't remember what we called it.
The Mountain Men will probably be 1805 to 1832. And when we do the Last Frontier, I'm thinking Gold Rush to statehood. So a bigger chunk of time. So I was kind of in thinking about that, reading that book.
What happens to these books after you've read them? I mean, do you keep every book that you get your hands on and read?
I'm keeping that son of a bitch, that's for sure.
Well, I'm just thinking they could be good for the auction house, especially with your
annotation. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, it's a great book, man. Dirk Durham from Phelps Game Calls.
The Bugler.
Did you see this thing he sent in?
No.
Some guys goofing on their buddy near Lewistown, Idaho, took out a billboard with their buddy's face on it.
Nice.
It says, "Here's the deal. Need archery lessons? Call literally anyone but Bob."
It's a huge billboard.
They put it on his
picture of him.
They put it on his route to work. Brutal.
What does Bob do for work?
Well, he does not have very successful hunters, is his problem. So they're just dogging on him. They put his face, they left off his last name. Need archery lessons? Call literally anyone but Bob.
And you got to think about how many people have joked about doing that to one of their buddies.
Then they
But these guys
publicly shamed.
carried it out, saw it to fruition.
They actually put money where their mouth is.
Yeah,
Put money where their mouth is.
I like
on
these
it.
guys.
I'd like to know what that cost them.
Well, Seth, before we go, can you update us on the A-frame?
Oh yeah. Things are happening with the A-frame.
Talk about what happened.
So back in early December, I think it was, a tree fell on my shitty old shack in Alaska.
Cut a big old groove out of it.
Big old hole. Yeah, it messed a lot. It's kind of a blessing in disguise because there was
it is.
Well, there was a lot of rot issues that I didn't know about that had been covered up by certain things. And when
like the roof.
Yeah. Well, when the tree hit it, it just broke everything loose. But we have a real good buddy of ours, Dustin Olson's going up here in a couple weeks to basically fix everything that needs fixed. By the time we get up there in the summer, it should have a front and a back porch.
Oh, so he's going up just to work.
Yeah, he's going up for 2 weeks, him and some buddies.
Oh, that's nice.
He's a really good contractor. Does great work. We met him through he used to go up there and still does and work for the fishing lodge in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Doing well, not as he'd go up in the spring just to do contracting work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And yeah, kind of met him. He reached out to Kelsey one time and said, "Hey, like, if you guys need any help with anything up there, let me know."
That's great.
Yeah.
He's going to root out all the rot.
Yeah, he's basically replacing the front and the back wall of the A-frame, fixing the roof, and putting a front and back porch on it.
So you'll only have two more walls to go after this.
I was gonna say
No,
A-frame only has
There's only two walls.
Oh, yeah.
There's the front rotten one and the back rotten one.
Right, and then the rest is roof.
The rotten
Yeah,
the rest
roof.
the broken roof finishes it out.
Which the roof wasn't rotten. Well, it had skylights in it, which is a terrible. If you're ever building a place in Southeast Alaska, don't put skylights in your roof. So the beams around those were rotten. He's pulling those out.
Yeah, it's like, I wonder if that's going to start leaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my dad will recommend you never in any home put
Put a
skylight in.
Especially in a place that gets 13 feet of rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a different looking place when we get up there.
Have you hit a point where you did
regret it?
Yeah.
No.
So, but even after the tree fell on it, did you think to yourself, I wish I would have never bought a cabin?
No. I told myself from day one, as long as as long as we own the land, like, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might take a while, but eventually, like, when the tree hit, I was like, this sucks, but we still own the land, and it's like not the end of our time there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter how long it takes, we'll eventually like rebuild something. Just because that's like my favorite place on earth.
And that place is always work, and so you know that going into it.
Yeah.
Tree or no tree, you go up there and do a bunch of work, and it's a lifestyle. You know, you like it.
Yeah, and people might be like, we spend this year we're gonna spend 3 weeks up there. Like, how can you justify doing all that just to spend 3 weeks at a place?
Yeah, but you learn so much.
You don't know until you actually experience it. You'll never understand it.
Yeah, but if you're, you gotta keep up your mental acuity as you get older.
Yeah,
like the way you got to stay engaged. Now, if you grow up not in that marine environment,
mm-hmm.
The amount of stuff you have to learn, I think it's like.
Yeah,
way better than reading books. I mean, I like reading books. You saw me just read the whole damn book. But to go like, well, I don't know, you could grow up not there, and you go there, and you have to learn all about everything that it takes to be there.
Yep,
that's good for your head.
Totally,
I think you have to learn a lot.
Oh yeah, you have to learn. Basically,
it stretches your brain back out again.
Yeah, yeah, and you learn how to build stuff in ways that last a long time. You learn how to schedule your day out because you live and die by the tide up there.
You got to learn how to make do with that you can't run to the store.
Yeah. You got to make something out of nothing.
You wind up looking around for rusty nails and stuff. I think I did see a rusty bent up nail over there.
This probably doesn't need as many screws in it as it currently has.
Yep.
Yeah, you learn to dig through your neighbor's place for stuff.
Yep.
Try to remember where you saw garbage that now wish you hadn't, or where you put garbage that you wish you hadn't have thrown out because you want it back now.
Yeah, you second guess throwing out everything or burning anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, should I burn that half rotten 2x4? I might be able to use it somewhere.
You know my USS Jimmy Carter hat?
Yeah.
I found it beachcombing, a USS Jimmy Carter hat. Kept it. It got real moldy. And I always looked at it. And it's always like kind of like, do you get rid of stuff? Do you not get rid of stuff when it gets moldy or whatever? One day I put that Jimmy Carter hat on top of a burn pile, soaked with gas. This is the truth. I was like, okay, I'm going to burn that hat, which a decision I did not take lightly. Had a pile of garbage soaked with gas, put the hat on top, put a lighter to that pile. You know how it explodes,
Yeah.
I'm not shitting you. It shot that hat off the pile and it landed over yonder.
It's a sign from above.
I wear that hat every time I'm there now. It was something. It was like God.
Maybe Jimmy Carter's soul is trapped in that hat, and that's how he's living so long.
It was God saying, "Don't burn that hat."
That's interesting because I guess that must have happened since the last time I've been there. Because I was going to say, well, I've never seen you wear that hat.
I wear it now. After that happened, I know a sign when I ever see one.
You wear that, and then when you get to burn and stuff, you put on that.
I have a flame-proof helicopter suit. What do they call that stuff? Nomax?
Yeah.
Yeah, we burned so much stuff. We bought that place. Me and Danny both have flame-proof suits. We went there for a month. Every day we just zip up our flame-proof suits and burn stuff. Yeah. I had an uncle die burning leaves. Not really my uncle, but we called him our uncle.
I have a pile of stuff to burn this summer.
Well, we'll get some updates from up there because you guys are going to be recording two podcasts. So maybe you'll do one from that A-frame.
Just do one burning stuff. What are we burning now, Seth?
Yeah, I wouldn't burn that. Sorry, Yanni, go ahead.
You should wear your hat.
I will wear my hat.
Yeah.
USS Jimmy Carter. It's a nuclear sub. All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Give me a little fear, something that inspires. Put me on the edge. That's what lights my fire. When our bones grow old, we won't be undone. We'll be part of the great story of how to live life when you have won. Open country, open up. We're gonna breathe you in. Lend us all that you have. Let us be your friend. What you give to our bright soul allows us to survive. Sunrise, moonset all around. What a damn good ride. Turn that dust into a cloud and write down our dreams. We've seen a lot of beauty, 'cause we've seen a lot of scenes. Rising line, never ending. Time disappears. Where we're going, what we gotta do. Only denied by our fear. Open country, open up. We're gonna breathe you in. Lend us all that you have. Let us be your friend. What you give to our bright souls allows us to survive. Sunrise, moonset all around. What a damn good ride. When you see all the buzzing bees and the money trees, they turn and fall. We decide we ain't gonna be no Johnny Appleseed planner at all. Bring us a little rain. Show us what can grow. All our hope never get where we fall. Open country, open up. We're gonna breathe you in. Lend us all that you have. Let us be your friend. What you give to our bright souls allows us to survive. Sunrise, moonset all around. What a damn good ride. What a damn